Hello, and welcome to our town hall, As Goes Texas, So Goes America. I'm Mr. Uribic. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, our town hall is hosted by Senator Bernie Sanders with special guests Julián Castro and Beto O'Rourke. We also have four great progressive candidates lined up as well: Mike Siegel, Julie Oliver, Donna, Imam, and José Garza. They'll be joining us to talk about how we can continue to fight for a progressive agenda in Texas and win. I'd like to welcome those of you who are joining us to our webinar. You can use the chat feature to say hello, tell us where you're joining from, and also we want to encourage you to comment throughout the show. Tell us how you're showing up for the progressive movement and what you're doing right now so that we can win big in Texas and beyond. And I just wanted to kind of create some context about why we're gathering tonight. You know, as our country grapples with coronavirus, a climate crisis, social unrest caused by racial injustice, it's no exaggeration to say that this will be one of the most important elections of our life. So as many of you know, Senator Sanders changed what's politically possible in 2015 when he committed to running a presidential campaign funded by small dollar donations. He showed the country that you can not only run on issues that directly affect working people, but you can do it without taking corporate PAC money. So until we have publicly financed elections, progressives have to raise a lot of money to run strong, viable campaigns. Senator Sanders has not only transformed how we raise money for campaigns, but he's been injecting that model into progressive campaigns all across the country, four of which we're going to hear about here tonight. So as you watch and listen to what our guests have to say, we hope that you'll consider giving a donation to the candidates working so hard to transform Texas. They are fighting for a Green New Deal, Medicare for all, to fix our broken criminal justice system and our racial justice system. So in the last, I also want to let you know that we are coming up on an FEC deadline before early voting begins in Texas. It's coming up in just a few hours. So candidates like Julie, Mike, and Donna will be reporting how much money they raised, not just how much money they raised, but also how many contributions they've received and how many people gave to them. Now, this is incredibly important, not just because of the money and the resources they'll have to talk to voters and to get the vote out, but these reports are a way of showing the media and showing our supporters and even our opponents the unmistakable strength of our grassroots movement. So if you can afford it, I'm going to ask you to chip in using the link you see on the screen tonight so that we can rally the progressive movement, we can get out the vote all across the state, we can defeat Donald Trump, and we can transform Texas and our entire country. So I just want to welcome those of you joining our town hall. You are joining As Goes Texas, So Goes America. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Bernie Sanders.
Misty, thank you very much. And let me thank everybody for joining us this evening. Let me begin with a piece of trivia. Are you all ready for this one? What does the state of Texas and the state of Vermont have in common? Anyone know the answer? Okay, I will give you the answer. And the answer is that both Vermont and Texas were independent republics before they joined the United States of America. I think Vermont was an independent republic for 14 years. And actually, before it joined the United States, gave some thought to joining Canada. Texas was an independent republic, I believe, for 10 years. So that is our history lesson. And now let's get to the year 2020. And in the year 2020, all of you know that we have perhaps the most important election in the history of the United States of America. And what this election is about is defeating a president who is a pathological liar. We don't need a pathological liar in the White House. He is a president who does not believe in science, which is one of the reasons we have done so poorly in terms of the coronavirus. And he is a president who rejects the science regarding climate change. And on top of all of that, we have a president with strong authoritarian tendencies, a president who does not believe in the rule of law, does not understand the Constitution of the United States. And in fact, and I say this not just to Democrats, but to independents and Republicans as well, this is a president who has not said that he will leave office even if he loses the election. So this is an enormously important election. We have got to get rid of Donald Trump. We've got to elect Joe Biden as our next president. But this is not just a presidential election. We need to make sure that in the House of Representatives, Democrats expand their majority there so they have more power to push for a progressive agenda. And in the United States Senate, we need to see that the Democrats gain the majority. And when we do that, when we have Joe Biden as president, Democrats controlling the House and the Senate, we are going together, all of us, push for the most progressive agenda since Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the 1930s. And what our agenda is about is saying that healthcare is a human right, not a privilege. And we're going to fight for Medicare for all. We're going to make sure that public colleges and universities are tuition free. And we're going to do our best to cancel student debt in this country. Unlike Trump, we understand that climate change is very real, and we're going to push for a Green New Deal or a variation on that, which will create millions of jobs in America as we transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And we are going to reform our broken and racist criminal justice system and develop a comprehensive immigration piece of legislation which provides a path towards citizenship for all of the undocumented, among many, many other issues. And I don't have to tell, and I know that our panelists tonight, Julián and Beto, are more familiar with this issue than I am. But right now, there is no great secret that the state of Texas, as many other states, are struggling economically. Over 11 million people have seen their incomes go down in Texas since the pandemic began. Nearly 5 million homes, 1/3 of all households in Texas, are struggling to pay their rent and mortgage. You have 3.5 million people who are food insecure, not quite sure how they're going to be feeding their families tomorrow. And 659,000 Texans have lost their health insurance in a state which I think has more uninsured people than any other state in the country. Now, why are we focusing on Texas tonight? Well, for a couple of reasons. What the title of this live stream is about is, as goes Texas, so goes America. And what that essentially means that right now in Texas, according to recent polls, Joe Biden is a couple of points behind. This is a battleground state where Biden can win. And if Biden wins 39 electoral votes from Texas, forget about it. The election is over. No way Donald Trump can win if he loses Texas. And Texas is in grasp. We can do it if we mobilize effectively. And furthermore, tonight we have 4 great candidates, 3 for the U.S. House of Representatives, all progressive candidates, all of whom have an excellent chance to win their elections. And we're going to hear from them in a few minutes with your help. And we have a strong candidate for Travis County District Attorney. And we'll hear from José Garza in a minute as well. So here's the point, and I say to the people of Texas and to the people of the United States who are watching this program. Texas is pivotal in this election. If we do well in Texas, Joe Biden becomes the president, and we are going to increase progressive representation in the U.S. House of Representatives. So that is why tonight we are focusing on the great state of Texas. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce 2 guys who know a hell of a lot more about Texas than I do. Beto O'Rourke, as you know, is a former U.S. congressman from El Paso and ran a brilliant campaign for the United States Senate in which he really shocked all of the pundits and came within a very few points of defeating Ted Cruz for the US Senate. And we also have Julián Castro. Julián served as the US Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, under President Obama. And he is a native of San Antonio, Texas. So let me welcome Beto and Julián to our live stream. And let me throw it out to you, Beto. Does Biden have a chance to win in Texas? How can that happen? And what will the significance of that be now and in the future?
He does. And I would put it so strongly as to say it is really his to lose. I got to tell you something. As you were speaking and as people were rolling in, you'd see in the chat comments folks saying, hello from Blanco, hello from Marfa, hello from Dripping Springs, hello from Missouri City. This is Austin, El Paso, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, but it's also the other 244 counties in the state of Texas who are present tonight. This state is in play. And in addition to everything that you've just said that is on the line on November 3rd, I would add this. We have an historic opportunity to win a majority in the state house for the first time in 20 years. And as you know, in 2021, that state house will begin redrawing the political district boundaries in Texas, including 3 new congressional seats. And in this, the most voter suppressed, voter intimidated state in the union that before 2018 ranked 50th in voter turnout because of how successfully Republicans had controlled the votes of Black and Mexican-American voters and voters in communities of color through voter ID legislation, racial gerrymandering, hundreds of polling place closures. If we win that majority, not only can we begin to dismantle that infrastructure of suppression, but I have a theory that we can turn this idea of coattails on its head. And these grassroots, ground level campaigns, which are expanding the electorate, 1.5 million new registrations just since 2016, and electrifying those voters, they will send them up ballot to the congressional races, the US Senate races, and yes, Senator Sanders, to the presidential race. One thing I'd love for the folks who are here to know, you know, the polls, as you pointed out, show Biden a point or two behind Trump pretty consistently since March. Hadn't really moved much. Polls in Texas tend to undercount Democrats. On the eve of that election with Ted Cruz, most polls had me down 9, 8, you know, at a maximum 7 points from Ted Cruz. We lost by 2.5. We were undercounted by 4 or 5. Hillary Clinton was supposed to lose to Donald Trump by 14, 13 points in Texas. She lost by 9, the best Democratic presidential performance in decades in this state. So my point is, you get this, Senator Sanders, in a way that, and not because they're bad folks, but it's the inertia of the establishment that most national Democrats don't. They don't believe their lying eyes. They for 44 years, this state has voted for the Republican nominee for president. 1976 was the last time they voted for a Democrat. But on election night, if these 38 electoral college votes come in for Joe Biden, that ends the chaos and confusion that Donald Trump is likely to try to sow and exploit, and it settles this election. That's how important Texas is, and it is winnable.
Beto, thank you very much. And thanks for all the great work that you are doing now in trying to mobilize grassroots Texas. Our next speaker is Julián Castro, who, as I mentioned earlier, was the Secretary of HUD under President Obama. Julián, take it from wherever you want to go, but maybe if you could add a special word about how important and significant the Latino vote in Texas is.
Yeah, and Senator Sanders, thank you so much for organizing this tonight and for getting a great group of progressive candidates that I know you're supporting and all of us are supportive of in their races. It means a lot to Texans for you to take the time and energy to be here tonight, and for Beto to be here as well, who inspired so many people in 2018 and is doing a lot during this cycle to help get the vote out here in Texas. You know, I grew up in a Texas, you know, I'm here in San Antonio tonight. I grew up in a Texas where people would say, you know, I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me. we're going through right now a time where people in this state are saying, you know what, the Republican Party no longer represents who I am. They watched the train wreck last night in the debate. They understand that even during this COVID-19 time period, when so many people are facing eviction, so many people either don't have health care or they're worried about the security of their health care when they absolutely need it. So many folks are out of work. And Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump are sitting there, not passing the HEROES Act, not doing what they could to keep us safe. And so what you see, especially in suburban communities and in communities of color, is a coalescing, a coming together that's creating a powerful dynamic to make this state very competitive. As Beto said, to flip those 9 seats that we need to take back the state house, to take, I think, between 6 and 8 congressional seats, including some of the folks who are here tonight, and then also to get the electoral votes for Joe Biden. The Latino community is a huge part of that. People have written about it for years. They've talked about it. The growth continues in that community. And what we've seen, especially in places like the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, is they've had a front row seat to the incompetence of Donald Trump and also to state leadership here. They've been very hard hit, the hardest hit in the state by COVID. And I think it was a wake-up call for a lot of families. And so you have a lot of people ready to vote on November 3rd or before that. And you can tell that story in San Antonio, in Houston, in the DFW area, certainly out there in El Paso where Beto is, and all places in between. That Latino community, I think, is poised to turn out at a greater rate than we did in 2016 and to make a big difference in this race. And you know, I'm looking forward to that, because when we do, I think the significance of that is it's going to send a huge message way beyond the boundaries of this state, that people want healthcare for everybody, that they want, you know, a leader that listens to science and not right-wing ideology, that they want somebody who is going to be a president for everybody and not just some people, and that we're going to dismantle this system that is rigged for people that are already doing well and also rigged against, too oftentimes, people of color. That's going to be a powerful message.
And Julian, I think everything that you're saying is something that the Republican leadership understands as well. And their response has been, and correct me if I am wrong, an incredible effort toward voter suppression. Beto, do you want to say a few words on the nature of voter suppression historically in Texas?
You know, I would argue, Senator Sanders, that the Voting Rights Act exists because of Texas, and not just because Lyndon Baines Johnson signed into law in 1965, but Texas made the case for the law in the first place. For 144 years now, Texas has perfected the science of suppressing voters from the ballot box. And I mentioned, you know, the current manifestation in voter ID laws. Senator Sanders, those voter ID laws, the most onerous in the country, were implemented within minutes of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's fiery dissent in the 2013 Shelby decision. You can use your license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at the ballot box, but you cannot use your student ID at the University of Texas at El Paso to prove who you are at the ballot box. It was intentionally discriminatory. You add to that the racial gerrymander, the polling place closures, but it is a very long history. For 20 years in the 20th century, from 24 to 1944, there was the all-white Democratic primary. By force of law, as a Black person in Texas, you could not vote in the party primary that was dispositive for county commissioner all the way up to U.S. senator. The vestiges of that have produced the low voter turnout we see. It's not for a lack of love of democracy. It is because this was by design. You have 5.6 million eligible Latino voters. Those voters could, and I believe will, decide the outcome, not just of the election in Texas, but the election for this country. And I think there is some political or poetic justice in that a population that has so long been excluded, suppressed, intimidated, or intended to be marginalized could, at this moment of truth and definition for the future of this country, stand up and set the course for America. And I think what you're doing here, what Julian is doing, and how he has electrified the electorate here, especially in his presidential run, and then these candidates that we're about to meet. I think that's where the energy and the passion is right now. So I want to be very clear-eyed about what we are going into right now. And that suppression, I'm afraid, is only going to intensify in the next 34 days. However, I think that we are more than a match for it at this moment by the energy that's being produced by Julie, by Donna, by Mike, by Jose, by these other amazing candidates up and down the ballot. And really, to echo what Julian said, the fact that you see this from a distance and understand that Texas is in play, that's catalytic. That is energizing voters even more. So thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you. Julian, did you want to add anything to what Beto said?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, Beto said it very well. And I would just add that maybe one of the most important messages that we've all put out there for folks watching, because I know a lot of folks in Texas are watching, is to have a plan to vote. We have, leadership that is trying to make it as hard as possible. They've thrown people off the rolls. They've closed polling locations. The mail is slower these days. So have a plan to vote and make sure that you and your family are ready to go and do that as soon as early voting starts, in person or by mail.
Okay, well, let me thank Beto and Julian. And what I want to do now is introduce you to 4 candidates, all of whom are strong progressives, 3 running for U.S. House and 1 running for district attorney. Mike Siegel is a civil rights lawyer and former public school teacher, running to represent Texas' 10th congressional district, which covers East Central Texas between Houston and Austin. Mike's progressive populist platform includes healthcare for all, Green New Deal, and expanding workers' rights. Mike, thanks so much for being with us.
Well, thank you so much, Senator, for your solidarity and generosity. Thank you, Congressman O'Rourke and Secretary Castro, for inspiring us all. And so, yes, I'm Mike Siegel, Democratic nominee for Congress here in the Texas 10th, a district that spans 9 counties between Austin and Houston, a district that was gerrymandered to be a permanent Republican seat, but a district that now, because of all of our hard work, is a battleground race in 2020 and one that we can win. And I think the key to this change has been showing people that Democrats are going to fight for everyone here in Texas. My career has been in public service for 21 years as a school teacher, a union organizer, civil rights lawyer, and city attorney. And I'm inspired by movements for social change, especially here in Texas. And it was in 2017 when we fought this hateful anti-immigrant law, Senate Bill 4, a Show Me Your Papers law, when we built a statewide coalition that included all the big cities in Texas, as well as the small towns, the border towns. And we all joined together to sue the governor and to stand up for our immigrant community and fight racial profiling. And that's what inspired me to run for the first time in 2018. But we've had continuing struggles for LGBTQ equality. We beat one of these transphobic bathroom bills recently. We've had an ongoing labor movement here, including the fight to support the United Auto Workers strike here in Arlington, Texas, when many of us traveled north to walk the picket line in solidarity to fight for better wages and working conditions. And to me, it's the spirit of solidarity that's been so important for my campaign and so much of what we're doing in Texas. The most important moment for me in 2018 was actually in Waller County, a rural county here in the Texas 10th, when I joined with students at Prairie View A&M, an historically Black college there, to stand up for their right to vote. And the students were being told they couldn't vote on campus, even though there was on-campus voting. It was a ridiculous situation. But I actually had a staffer, Bernie, a great fan of yours, a young man named Jacob Aronowitz, who delivered a letter. And while he was delivering this demand letter, he was arrested by the county sheriff. And that moment actually turned out to be an amazing opportunity. We got media. From that media, the Secretary of State was forced to change this policy and to let those students vote on campus. And that by itself was a wonderful victory for my campaign. But also it established this foundation of solidarity that, hey, I'm this white guy from Austin, but we're out there in Waller County and we're making sure the students can vote. And in 2020, we've continued to bring that spirit. There's a coal plant that's been there for 40 years in Fayette County, polluting the air and water. And we've been joining the movement to transition that property, to make it an example of what a Green New Deal could look like, to create jobs, cleaning up the pollution and building something new. We've been fighting the purge of Mexican-American voters that was initiated by our governor a purge that we were able to beat back by organizing. We've been rallying to save the post office. And to me, when all of us join together to fight on all these fronts, that's when we build what I like to call the unstoppable coalition. And when everybody knows that Texas Democrats are going to fight for everyone, that's when we're going to win. Me, Julie Oliver, Donna, Imam, José Garza, statewide candidates, presidential candidates, that's when we're going to win. And so I'm so honored to be with you all here today, to be part of this work and this movement. Thank you so much, Senator.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. Our next guest is Julie Oliver. Julie is running to represent Texas's 25th congressional district, which stretches from Fort Worth to Austin. Julie is an unapologetic progressive who is committed to passing Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, and who doesn't take a nickel of PAC money. Julie, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Senator Sanders, and thank you for hosting this. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be part of the hope that people see in our great state. And I'm so privileged to also share the screen with Secretary Castro, who spent my birthday with me virtually on a screen just like this, and spent, I think it was last Thursday, with Representative O'Rourke on another virtual event. So thank y'all for having me. Texas is ground zero. I'm going to share with y'all super quick why I got into this race. And this is my second time to run. I ran in 2018 as well. It was all about healthcare. Being the mother of a child who has healthcare, a lot of healthcare issues, cardiology issues, and an immune deficiency is the reason I looked at my husband and I said, honey, I have a crazy idea and I need you to talk me out of it. I'm going to run for Congress. And he didn't. He said, Julie, not only do we need more women in Congress, but we need more women with your experience. Because many, many years ago, I was a Medicaid mom at the tender age of 17 with my Medicaid benefits dropping on my 18th birthday, and then ended up being able to truly have the fortune of going to college without a college plan in our family. Thanks in total part to federal programs that paid for it. But after law school, I also spent 15 years in healthcare finance. And in Texas, we finance healthcare in the craziest of ways. We spend our property taxes funding emergency room care for the folks who are uninsured. We spend our income taxes, send it to Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. redistributes to other states like Mitch McConnell's state of Kentucky, states that have expanded Medicaid. And for those of us who are lucky enough to have insurance, in the blink of an eye, it could be gone when a pandemic that has not been taken seriously by the president or state leadership here in Texas takes away your job, and along with it, the healthcare coverage. Like a family that I met recently virtually when the husband lost his job and their child needed chemotherapy. The husband lost his insurance. The child still needed chemotherapy. They racked up tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt. And so we have a real opportunity, not only with this pandemic, but also with the likely repeal of the Affordable Care Act by the Supreme Court to get universal health care enacted next year in 2021. And that will only happen if we deliver the 38 electoral votes to Joe Biden and we get Democrats elected up and down the ballot. So whether you're here in Austin, Central Austin, whether you're in Lampasas, Texas, everybody can be part of the healthcare solution. And I do think that is Medicare for all. So again, what a privilege to be here tonight. Grateful for you, Senator Sanders, and your leadership in this, and looking forward to taking the oath of office with Mike and Donna next year.
Okay, look forward to seeing you in DC. Our next guest is Donna Imam, who's running to represent Texas's 31st congressional district in Central Texas, north of Austin. She is a computer engineer and tech entrepreneur by trade, and is a strong supporter of Medicare for all, education for all, and bringing high-wage jobs to fight against hunger, homelessness, and poverty. Donna, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Senator Sanders. I really appreciate you guys having me on here, and thank you so much for the support. You know, the GOP might have gerrymandered Texas, but Julie, Mike, and I are going to make sure that we have representation. And my district, which is one of the most competitive in the entire country, just 2.9% from flipping blue. I am here today as a first-time candidate that has never ran for office because of Representative Beto O'Rourke. He put this district in play. And he's shown that if we give Texans something to vote for, we can get them out to vote. And Secretary Castro, I thank you for getting up on the presidential, campaign stage along with Representative Beto O'Rourke. Both of you have focused Texans on the vote, that we can win, we can bring change, and we can bring change that is fiscally astute and smart. Look, we've had the pandemic. 200,000 families had a funeral. 15,000 of them were Texans. Some of them did not get to hug their family member goodbye. They had to say bye over a phone. This didn't have to happen for most of them. And it is our responsibility to make sure that we solve these problems. Nothing has changed. If you didn't have healthcare coverage before the pandemic, you don't have it now. If you had student loan debt as big as your mortgage, you still have student loan debt. And if you didn't have a job, it's worse. 1.8 million Texans today are still collecting unemployment and have no idea how they're going to pay their rent or meet their mortgage. But these problems can be solved. And what I like to say is this, that there's absolutely no doubt in all of our minds on this call that these are human rights, to be able to go see a doctor when you are sick, to be able to live debt-free, to be able to have a high-wage job so you can afford those groceries and your rent. What I like to say is that we are bringing the financial case for what we believe is the morally right thing to do. We're taking our case to voters all across this district. Williamson County went blue in 2018. We're going to close the gap in Bell County. We're going to flip this district blue. We're going to bring representation, and we are going to get healthcare coverage for every single person in this country. And bottom line is the solutions that our campaign is bringing, along with Mike and Julie's, they are going to be cheaper. They are going to cost less. And we can get all of these solutions done if we work on it. So thank you very much. Help us out, support us, and let's get this done.
Well, Donna, thank you very much. And let me thank Mike and Julie as well. In case some of you are confused, yes, this is the state of Texas. I know you think it's a conservative state. It is not. We have great progressives in Texas, and with your help, they're going to win on November 3rd. I want to now introduce a candidate who is running for district attorney in Travis County. And I think we have all, in the last many months, focused on a broken and racist criminal justice system, on police brutality, on police murder. And if you are concerned about those issues, you got to pay attention to people who are running for prosecutor, people who are running for district attorney, because those are the people who are going to be in the front line in the struggle to reform a very, very broken criminal justice system. José Garza is running for district attorney in Travis County, which includes Austin. He leads the Workers' Defense Project and previously served in the Obama administration and as a public defender. Jose, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Your leadership, Beto and Julian's leadership, has paved the way for a Texas that is reflective of the regular people who make our state great. I'm so grateful to be with you, and I'm grateful to be with Donna, Mike, and Julie. Their voices are the future of leadership in our state, and our future is bright. My name is José Garza, and I am running to be district attorney in Travis County. Because right now, in this moment, our public safety is at risk all across the state. Our public safety is at risk because President Trump and Governor Abbott have mismanaged the greatest public health crisis our country has faced in a century. Because of their failures, over 200,000 Americans and over 15,000 Texans have lost their lives. Because of their failures, over 10 million working people have lost their jobs, and families are on the brink. Donald Trump and Greg Abbott have set the stage for an enormous amount of instability in our state. And instability is what makes us less safe. But it doesn't have to be this way. We have the power to fix this. Over the last 10 years, regular Texans, just like you watching at home, have been organizing and showing the power that you have to change our community and to change our state. For the last 10 years, progressive organizations like Texas Organizing Project, Workers' Defense, Texas Rising, and the Texas Labor Movement have been building power with working people, people of color, women, and young people. Because of their work and because of your work, we are on the verge of generational, transformational change all across this state. Because of your work, we are on the verge of electing Donna, Mike, and Julie. Together, we can fix our broken criminal justice system so that it doesn't weigh so heavily on working class people and people of color, so that it lifts up working class people and people of color instead of locking them up. Together, we can strengthen the power of workers to collectively bargain, and we can make sure that every American has access to healthcare. We can do this, and we will. So good to be with you, Senator Sanders.
Thank you very much, Jose. Misty, we have, I think, some questions, but I also want to remind our viewers about how they can help these four great candidates. How can they do that?
Absolutely. So on our screen, you can go to the link that you see to give right now, whatever you can afford. The gift that you give will be split between these amazing four candidates that you've heard about today. It's right here on your screen. So you can go to that link and we'll make sure that these candidates get a split gift from what we raised tonight. So thank you.
Okay, and we have, I believe, some questions
That's right.
from viewers, right?
Yep, that's right. So
All right.
we do have a few, we're going to take a few live questions right now. Our first question is going to come from a senior at the University of Texas. It looks like she's also involved, with March of Our Lives in Austin and is the outreach co-director for the Austin Muslim Democrats. Welcome to the show, Parisa Mahmood. What's your question for our panel?
Hi, good evening. My name is Parisa, and like she said, I'm a senior at the University of Texas. As a college student and a woman of color, it has been extremely tough to get myself to the therapist, despite being part of a generation that's seeing increased rates of depression and anxiety. The University Counseling Center has limited resources and outside care is very expensive. Texas ranks dead last in access to mental health care, so people like me all over the state are often forced to put our mental well-being at the bottom of our priorities. I see these barriers disproportionately affecting students, people of color, and working class people who often fall victim to stigma, don't have insurance, and already deal with financial stressors like student debt. So my question is, what role can and will you play in order to ensure everyone, including students like me, get all the mental health care we need?
Thank you very much for asking an enormously important question that is, in fact, on the minds of millions of people, not just in Texas, but in Vermont and all across this country. We have a mental health crisis in America, which has certainly been made worse by all of the anxiety relating to the pandemic and the isolation and that so many people are now feeling. Let me just say this, and I'll turn it over to our other panelists, and maybe some of the candidates want to jump in. But here is the bottom line. We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. And when I talk about health care, I am talking about comprehensive health care through a Medicare for All single-payer program, which understands that mental health is as much an health care issue as is cancer or a broken leg. So when we pass Medicare for All, what we will be doing is making mental health counseling and psychological help available to every person in our country as a human right. But I would like our other panelists, maybe starting with some of the candidates, to jump in on your views about the need to address the mental health crisis that Parisa raised.
Well, Both Donna and Julie, healthcare is a huge part of what you're running on. Donna, do you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. And Parisa is absolutely correct. If you're in Austin right now and you try to get a therapist or go to a therapist, you may have to wait months just to get an appointment. And that's if you have health insurance and you have health insurance coverage. Here's the truth, folks. Single payer healthcare for all, there's almost more than a dozen studies out there done by conservative think tanks and liberal think tanks. And they all say one thing, that single payer healthcare coverage for every single person, including mental health coverage, should not cost more than $2 to $3 trillion. In 2018, we spent $3.65 trillion while leaving out 80 million people, those people that Parisa is asking about. The way we solve this is not only with single payer healthcare, but we need to scale our healthcare infrastructure. That means we need more primary care physicians, we need more mental health care counselors, we need more nurses, we need more PAs. And when we address our challenges at the primary care level, at the preventative level, and stop using the ER as our first line of defense, we save money further. So absolutely, Parisa, if we're in Congress, you can bet Julie, I, and Mike will be fighting for this solution. And by the way, guys, the GOP has had Congress for years and they don't have a solution for healthcare. We do, and it's going to cost you less.
That's right, Donna. Oh, I was going to ask if Julie, you wanted to chime in. Go ahead, Senator.
No, that's just what I was going to say. Julie or Mike, please jump in if you want.
I was just going to say, I think y'all said it best, that yes, Medicare for All must include full coverage for mental health care system. It is a holistic health approach, but also even in addition to that, dental coverage and vision, which seniors under the current Medicare program don't have presently. They don't have dental, they don't have vision, they don't have mental health care services. So this is something that will benefit the entire population. And I can tell you, seeing a parent through end of life care, one of the things that she would have been most benefited from is mental health care services. And that wasn't available to her as a Medicare patient. So Medicare for All is the answer. And to Donna's point, yes, you can actually improve outcomes, save lives, and lower costs at the same time.
Mike, you want to say a word on that?
Well, actually, Senator, I'm lined up for the second question, but I definitely co-sign on what Julie and Donna are saying.
We do have a few more questions about healthcare, Senator. So let's get to the next question here. It looks like we have from El Paso, a social worker, Steph Ocasta has joined us. Steph, what's your question? I know you also were concerned about healthcare. There you go.
Hey, thank you. My name is Stephanie Acosta, and I live here in El Paso, Texas, where the state also ranks near last in access to healthcare, and where we have more children living in poverty than the national average. As a social worker, I've seen families struggle to obtain the most basic health and social services, and seen communities of color face these health disparities even before the pandemic. So with this combination of poverty and lack of healthcare, my question to you all is, what will you do for communities like El Paso and border communities who face these barriers and often feel that Washington is disconnected from our unique challenges along the US-Mexico border?
Mike, did you want to kick us off? And then I think we should hear from Beto.
Certainly. Well, thank you, Steph, for that question. It's extremely important that, knock on wood, we get Joe Biden into the White House, we take back the Senate, and we expand the Democratic majority in the House. We need to deliver for the American people. We're not going to have any time to wait. I mean, no 2-year process to expand one piece of legislation. We have to come ready to go. And I'm really concerned about the idea that we have 50 million unemployed Americans, people who've applied for unemployment during this crisis. And so I think this is essentially our New Deal moment. Just like when FDR during the Great Depression mobilized federal resources to create millions of jobs, to put people to work, to put the United States in the position to defeat fascism abroad. and to lay the foundation for decades of growth of the middle class. This is another one of these moments when we have an enormous disparity of wealth between rich and poor. We have people who need work. We have crumbling infrastructure. And I want to see us to take action. So to me, I think we have tens of thousands of oil and gas workers in Texas who have lost their jobs. And the Republicans who hate the Green New Deal, they say it's a job killer, which of course is a lie. But they're not doing anything for these workers. In my district, Texas 10, we've lost at least 10,000 jobs, 10,000 or more families newly on unemployment. And so I want to create jobs, so whether that's in the healthcare sector, or maybe we need to build hospitals, especially in the rural areas. We need to strengthen our public education system. We need to upgrade our energy grids to handle all this new solar and wind power we're going to build. Up and down the line, we need to invest in America. And so to me, as Democrats, if we can deliver that in 2021, that'll create a lot of trust in the community, and it'll create the foundation for these other programs that we want, whether it's union rights, Medicare for all, and on down the line.
Congressman O'Rourke, did you want to add to that one?
Absolutely. First of all, go Mike. I love everything that he just said. And I want to reiterate what Senator Sanders has asked all of us to do, which is to donate to Mike and to Julie and to Jose and to Donna. Let's make sure that they can compete against effectively and win these Trump-enabling Republicans who have brought us to this point in this country, a point where nearly 16,000 of our fellow Texans have lost their lives to COVID. And that's not an act of God, and it's not by accident. It's not by force of nature. These were human decisions made by Donald Trump, made by Greg Abbott, made by John Cornyn, those who allowed our fellow human beings to die. And these deaths have not been borne equally across the state. You go down to the Rio Grande Valley, as Julian was saying, and so many people died so quickly of COVID there. And our Republican governor, inspired by Donald Trump, did not allow the chief executives of these counties, the county judges, to issue stay-at-home orders. And folks there died so quickly that they ran out of room in the morgues and in the funeral homes, and they were stacking the dead bodies in refrigerated FEMA trailers. El Paso County, Stephanie, where you and I live, for a while led the large counties in Texas in deaths per capita of COVID. And it's not an accident that the Rio Grande Valley is 95% Mexican-American and that El Paso is 85% Mexican-American. When we tout the heroism of these frontline workers who in reality very often are compelled to go to work because it's the only way they have a chance of paying the mortgage or putting food on the table or filling that prescription if they are lucky enough, and that's all it is, lucky enough to have health care, remind ourselves that they are making $7.25 an hour, which is the minimum wage in Texas for as long as we have the Republican domination in our congressional delegation. Why it's so important to elect Julie, Mike, and Donna so that they can change that. But there's another facet of this here in El Paso that is unique to communities like ours. And that is the open racism of this president, who describes asylum seekers as animals or an infestation. This is language of the Third Reich. This is not language of America. This is language that seeks to dehumanize people and make it okay to treat them less than human, to take the kids away from the arms of their mothers, to put them in cages, to separate those families in some cases permanently, to inspire a mass shooter to drive 600 miles and come to a Walmart in El Paso a year and a month ago and open fire and murder 23 Mexican-American and Mexican national human beings in this city. That is what we are up against right now at this moment. And so let's go into this election connecting these dots and understanding that this didn't just happen. It's not because of who we are and where we are. It's because of the people in positions of power and public trust. And until we change them through these elections that Senator Sanders has us focused on in Texas tonight, we will continue to see these very same problems. So the solution is at the ballot box. Folks, 5 days left to register to vote. If you or a family member or a classmate or a colleague or a neighbor is not yet registered, let's move hell and high water to get them registered before the 5th of October, 13 days before the first day of early voting. As Julian said, make a plan. Know where you are going to vote on the 13th of October, the first day of this election. And let's make sure that everyone in our lives is doing that. If you can donate to these candidates, if you can make phone calls on their behalf through their campaigns, if you want to join us at Powered by People, calling registered Democratic voters, whatever form that takes, in this year, it is not simply enough to tweet, to donate, as important as that is, to vote, to register. We've got to help mobilize others to do the same. And Stephanie, I think that's the only way out of the life and death challenge that you posed to us tonight. It's these elections in this state in this year.
Thank you, Congressman O'Rourke. And I remember when all of us were campaigning in Iowa right after that shooting had happened, and we held a vigil. And I just really appreciate your leadership on that, both you, Secretary Castro and Beto. We have a couple more questions here. So the next person I want to bring in is Roy Woody Jr. He's an electronic engineer right there in Austin. Roy, we're so happy you can join us. Welcome to the show. What's your question for the panel?
Good evening, y'all. My name is Roy Woody Jr., and I live in Austin, Texas. I was raised by a military father stationed at Fort Hood and nearby Killeen. The military pay was low, so my dad also had to work a second job. So many families know this struggle and have been hurting long before the COVID-19 pandemic. In Austin, there is a clear, even mapped economic divide that has always hit Black and Latino communities harder. This divide carries over and explains why these same communities are hardest hit by COVID-19. My question is, how do we build back not only to where we were before the health pandemic and economic recession, but beyond, given that so many Black, Latino, and other hard-hit communities struggled before 2020?
Secretary Castro, you want to take that one?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for the question, Roy, and for sharing a little bit of your background. You have a great question, which is, look, what we had before was not working for a lot of people. And just very quickly, at the beginning of this pandemic, there was a viral image, a photo of a sea of cars that were waiting in line for food bags from the San Antonio Food Bank. And the San Antonio Food Bank disclosed that at that time in the pandemic, 120,000 people a week were being served by the food bank. But they also said that before the pandemic, 60,000 people a week were being served. So to say, we can't go back to normal. What does that mean? That means that we need to make significant investments to ensure that families can prosper. Everything that we've talked about tonight, from making sure that we have healthcare for everybody, that we have Medicare for all. I believe that we also look at housing as a human right. So everybody has safe, decent, affordable housing as the rent continues to spike all over Texas and throughout the United States, that we end this digital divide that so many of our kids are suffering from right now as they've had to switch into remote learning, and invest in public education. I also know that the federal government is not the only place where we can get some of this done. Ultimately, we're going to need a federal government approach, but we can also make change at the local level. I'm a former mayor. I know Senator Sanders, also former mayor of Burlington. Beto was on the city council in El Paso. Cities across Texas have instituted paid sick leave ordinances, for instance. During this pandemic, cities like San Antonio and Houston and Dallas created direct rental assistance funds, and some of them put in place eviction moratoria of their own. You've also had cities like San Antonio did. We passed them an 1/8 of a cent sales tax to extend high quality full day pre-K for a lot of low income students who weren't getting it before. So there are many things that we can also do at the local level. And the last one I'll note, which is very timely, is ending police violence and reimagining public safety. Because when you talk about police union contracts, when you talk about disciplinary policies, accountability, transparency, so much of the action on that is at the local level and in the state legislature, where too often times there are roadblocks to get true accountability for police officers who use excessive force. So to all of those candidates out there that are running at the local level and the state level, we also, give a shout out and give some love and say that all of us have a role to play in making change.
Thank you, Secretary Castro. And I just want to remind folks as you're watching, if you want to throw down and give some of your hard-earned money to the candidates that are responding to your questions, you can do that at bernie.to/Texas. We have got a little bit more time left for some questions, but I did want to just ask Donna, did you want to respond to that? To Roy's question about how do we build back better? Things weren't all that great before the pandemic.
Yeah, Roy, you and I have a lot in common. One is I'm also an electrical engineer, so it's great to see you on here. Number two, most of Killeen is in Bell County. And so believe it or not, even today, we have service members in Killeen that frequent the food banks. And this was prior to the pandemic, right? And in Bell County, one of the biggest challenges that we have is we don't have high wage jobs. Most people are limited to service jobs at less than $10 an hour. One of the biggest interesting things about Bell County is a majority minority district. More than 50% of Bell County is Black Americans, Hispanic and Latino Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans. And what the challenges that they face in our healthcare system is unfathomable. First of all, the maternal mortality rate among Black women is 2 to 3 times higher than any other segment of the population. What we're doing in our district is we work with people in our district to come up with solutions. So one of the things that I'm advocating for is that we actually invest, just like Representative O'Rourke mentioned and Representative Secretary Castro mentioned, that we have to invest in these communities. Black Americans and Latino Americans disproportionately have been impacted by COVID-19. Why? The GOP wants to say, oh, they had underlying health conditions. Why do they have underlying health conditions? Because for decades, they have never been able to go to see a primary care physician. They don't even have a primary care physician to go to. This is why they have these underlying conditions. And until we scale the healthcare infrastructure, bring in physicians into these communities, rural communities, communities all over Texas, we will not solve this problem. So we have to invest and we have to ensure that physicians graduate debt-free. They go back to their communities and serve their communities. And that's how we're going to solve these challenges. And by the way, I believe active duty service members need a pay raise. They should be able to live comfortably. They're serving our country. They've put their lives on the line for us. So these are the solutions that we intend to bring. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, we have time for one last question. Our question comes from a small business owner right there in San Antonio. Matthew Jones has a question for us. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Hey, Misty. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew. As a San Antonian, I remember in 2012, when our mayor at the time, Julián Castro, successfully pushed through a ballot measure known as Pre-K for SA that he was mentioning just a little bit earlier in the conversation. That program expanded high quality pre-K and really has been transformational for our community. And it kind of reimagined what government could do for its people. But at the time, I remember him being criticized for people would say you spend too much time on issues that weren't in the purview of the mayor or the city government. So my question to each of you, especially those running for office now, is what will you do when you're elected to reimagine your role in government in order to really help working class people in their daily lives?
Thank you for that question, Matthew. I wanted to go to you, Jose, running for district attorney. What can you do to help working people?
Well, it's such a fantastic question. And I think one of the first things that I have a responsibility to do as a candidate for district attorney is to help bring a new understanding to our community about what public safety is. The number one job of the district attorney is to keep our community safe. But for so long, we have been told that what public safety is locking up as many working class people and people of color as we can. We have been told that if we only lock up enough working class people and people of color, that will make us more safe. But we know that that's a lie. We know it not only because of our own lived experiences, but because we can see it in the data. We know that what public safety really is a good job. We know that public safety is access to healthcare. We know that public safety is good schools to send our children. Public safety is stability. And when our communities and our neighborhoods have stability, we are all more safe. So if we can change our understanding collectively about what public safety is, then we can build a criminal justice system that follows that evidence and follows that data. And that means ending our war on drugs. It means ending our cash bail system here in Travis County. If we can reimagine what public safety is, then we can fundamentally reimagine our criminal justice system.
Let's go to you, Julie. How can we reimagine your role in government once you're there in the halls of Congress?
So when we get to Congress, I know Mike, Donna, and I are all probably going to immediately run to co-sponsor the Medicare for All bill. And here's what I want us to reimagine. Reimagine this untethering of employment from your healthcare coverage. Should have never begun in the first place. Imagine the ingenuity that we get to unlock when people can leave those jobs that they are tied to for that healthcare coverage. We know we have a climate day of reckoning coming. We really do. And we need as much ingenuity as possible to address this huge cataclysmic problem head on. And I'm really excited to work with Donna about a Central Texas economic plan that would redeploy the men and women in uniform who've been fighting these forever wars into the clean energy, green energy economy right here in Texas, so that Texas can maintain its leadership status, not in the fossil fuel energy industry, but in green energy infrastructure and transmission. So it's really exciting. The possibilities are truly limitless.
Thank you, Julie. And Mike, to you, thoughts on this one?
Yes, thank you, Misty. And just to add to it, I think we should reimagine what a congressperson is. That our job is not to be in DC attending fundraisers and doing call time. It's actually to be in the community. When I was a city attorney for Austin, I helped co-author our paid sick leave ordinance, which was one of the first in the South. Of course, the Republican courts here struck it down. But so my job now is to go to DC and say, how can we have universal paid sick leave for everyone in this country? One issue I've been involved with in this campaign is poisoned groundwater. Not really a federal issue, but I know that some of the constituents in this district, when they get their water bill, it's a page and a half long of all the fracking fluids that are in their water. So what can I do? I should organize with the local community, with the environmental groups. Maybe we can hold a hearing, shine a light on what's happening here, and get some real results for people. And so to me, to return this to this idea of service and to use our platform in the same way that Bernie's sharing his platform with all of us down the ticket, we need to use our platform as members of Congress to help people, in the local communities, help them organize for change.
Thank you, Mike. And I just wanted to say that we tried something a little different tonight. We asked you all tuning in to consider giving money. We have blown past our goal already once, and we are getting really close to blowing past our next goal. And it means so much. It's money going right to these candidates to talk to people right there in their districts. Get out the vote. We have to have unprecedented turnout. So I just want to thank people. And really quick, Beto, before we kind of go into our call to action, did you want to add anything?
No, just to tell you that these are very dark days, and I got to be honest with you, I was pretty despondent after watching last night's debate that our country has come to this point because of Donald Trump, to be clear. And this lifts me out of that. This puts a smile on my face to listen to these candidates, to know that so many people across Texas are donating to them, to make them more competitive, more likely to win, to hold these positions of public trust, to actually do all these great things that we are talking about. That's the antidote to despair, and it's the key to victory, and that's what's happening on this call. So I want to echo what Mike and Julie and Donna and Jose have said in gratitude to Senator Sanders for the people he's able to attract, the profile that he has in this country, and certainly in Texas, to open that up to all these great candidates to ensure that they're more likely to win. I would love nothing more than for Texas to come through for the rest of the country on election night in these great races and at the very top of the ticket in those 38 electoral college votes. And Senator Sanders, what you're doing tonight, Misty, what you all are doing tonight, that just makes it more possible. And so just know from El Paso, we are so grateful to you all.
Great. Thank you, Beto. That was a great sort of getting us to the end of this program. I want to talk to you about voting in Texas. I am not from Texas. I am from Iowa, but I am so excited to talk about Texas. I think it is our chance to change what's politically possible in this country. So thank you for tuning in. And how to vote in Texas. We've heard about what you got to vote for, but how to vote, I want to make sure Beto already talked about it. You have to register to vote in Texas by Monday, October 5th. It is Wednesday, y'all. So you have just a few more days here to get registered. Make sure you get registered. You can do absentee ballot voting, but an excuse is required. So we're going to encourage you to vote early and in person, which starts on Tuesday, October 13th, and it goes through October 30th, which is a Friday. And as a reminder, of course, Election Day is on Tuesday, November 3rd, and polls are open from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. I just want to remind you again, registration in Texas, you got to get registered to vote, and you can go to vote.org if you're not sure if you're registered to figure that out. Figure out how to get registered. We have a few more days here, just about 5 more days for y'all in Texas to get registered. And for those of you all across the country who are tuning in, Texas Matters, and the way you can show up tonight is you can donate, and you can donate by going to bernie.to/Texas. So please consider donating to these candidates. Thank you so much to all of you who have thrown in already. And let's turn it back to our host of the evening. Back to you, Senator Sanders.
Well, Misty, thank you very much. And I got to tell you, picking up on a point that Beto just made, I have been smiling all evening. I have been smiling because I am so deeply moved by the decency and intelligence of all of the people that we have heard, the great work that Beto and Julian have done, and these 4 great young candidates. And I think if you go to the average American and you say, let's talk about Texas politics, they will say, well, that's a kind of a conservative state. That's a Republican state. The world is changing. And the title of today's program is As Goes Texas, So Goes America. And you have heard from 4 extraordinary candidates. And they are part of our entire progressive movement all across this country. Of great people, often young people, many times first-time candidates who are standing up and saying, you know what, this is the United States of America, the richest country in the history of the world. And we cannot continue massive income and wealth inequality. We cannot continue having 500,000 people in America homeless, a dysfunctional childcare system, 90 million people uninsured or underinsured. We cannot be the laughing stock of the world in terms of our refusal to deal with climate change or immigration reform or criminal justice reform. I love the phrase reimagine. And it's not just reimagining policing. It's reimagining the role of government in a democratic society. In reimagine that maybe someday, sooner than later, we will have governments that represent ordinary people and not just billionaires. That people like Donald Trump will no longer be paying $750 a year in their income tax, less than the average teacher or firefighter. So what tonight is about, and the reason that we are focused on Texas, there are great candidates running in every state in this country. And this is, I think, our 12th or 13th virtual rally, and we're going to go to other states, the battleground states especially. But as goes Texas, so goes America. And the fight for these candidates in Texas is our fight in Vermont, in New York, in California. So let's support these candidates, because if Biden can win in Texas, if these 4 candidates, great candidates, progressive candidates, can win 3 in Congress, 1 for district attorney, we will be deeply in the process of transforming this country and creating a government that works for all of us, not just the few. So I want to thank all of our viewers tonight. I want to thank all of the great candidates. I want to thank Julian and Beto, and thank my staff for helping to put together this event. We got 34 days left to go in the most important election in your life and in my life and in the modern history of this country. Despair, depression is not an option. We got to work and work and work and transform this country. Thank you all very, very much for being with us tonight.